Hey guys, Mikosh here. Today I'll be making a profit crafting video. This isn't going to be a video on how to profit craft with a specific item, and it's going to be more of a general guide. I was looking on YouTube trying to find any video that explains what profit crafting is and how to get into all of that good stuff and like how to learn how to profit craft by yourself. However, I didn't find much, and all I would see are just basic videos on how to profit craft a certain way. And the thing is with those videos, often by the time you see them, it doesn't work anymore because there's too many people using them. And those videos, although yes, very helpful because the more you practice, the better you'll be, they don't teach you how to think outside the box, which is often what makes the most amount of profit in profit crafting. So this video is going to be more a general guide on how to get into profit craft and what to look out for profit crafting. Now let's first talk about actually what profit crafting is. It's very simple. You just make currency by crafting or transforming certain items, and it often doesn't need a high-end build or any build at all. What's really cool about that is because you don't really need to invest much into a build, you can take all of that currency and put it into crafting items, which will by then after that make more currency. What's really cool also about profit crafting is currency is just a means to an end, and currency is made to make more currency. And with that high amount of currency, you will then be able to make the build of your dream without having to, walk through the pain of having a shitty build, running through maps, dying, and rinse and repeat until burning yourself just to get a mage blood. You'll be able to make a lot of currency. Once you have a lot of currency, you can then start your league by, well, having a nice build and not breaking your head. Now, profit crafting is the currency making method that generates the most amount of currency in the game. There's nothing that makes more currency than crafting in this game. Why? Because there's a huge amount of demand and the supply is fairly low compared to how many players dislike crafting, right? Ask your friends, way more than half will dislike crafting, and just even using alteration orbs on their flask is like the worst thing, their worst nightmare. So yeah, so profit crafting equals most amount of currency you can make in the game. Also, if you want to just learn how to, when you think about it, profit crafting is also when you craft for yourself, because if you would buy the item, you would have to pay for the cost of making the item, as well as its market value, which also, well, often the person who sells it is going to make a profit out of you. If you are able to craft for yourself, you can think of a way of making profit because you're saving yourself currency. You could put that currency elsewhere, and technically you would, well, win that currency as well. Now, this video is going to be talking about pretty much the basics. We're going to be talking about what makes a good profit craft, right? Meta, niche, how tedious, how difficult it is, the positive odds, all of that. And then we're going to be discussing about the different types of profit crafts. This video is not going to go in deep for every single one of the profit crafts. It's going to give you pathways to profit craft, and then you can learn, because each and one of them would require a video of their own. So you could just learn what interests you. And I'll be, making more profit crafting videos in the future anyways. And then we're going to be talking about prices, market, and, its possible manipulation by certain players and content creators. Now, the first thing to get right with profit crafting is you're going to have to change your relation to currency. For most players, their currency, it's either going to be their build, right? So it's their lifeline. Without currency, they're going to have a shitty time during Path of Exile. Or they have a lot of currency and they're afraid to spend it because for them, they worked so hard for that currency and they're just going to hoard it. It's going to sit in a stash and it's going to be useless. For Profit Crafter, you're going to have to, obviously with practice, you're slowly going to detach yourself from currency and you're just going to find it, currency is going to basically become a way of making more currency. You're going to take all of that currency, and hoarding currency is useless, right? It does nothing in your stash. So every time you have currency, well, you can make more items. Make more items, you make more currency. Sometimes you're going to make items that you're going to lose a lot of currency. However, because you're kind of detached from that, it won't stop you or limit you from going higher, higher, and higher, and, kind of go like your fullest potential. Because there's a lot of players that would probably be very, very good crafters and make a lot of currency. However, they are too afraid, and they tell themselves, oh yeah, it's just I don't like crafting. But no, it's just often it's going to be fear of losing that currency that limits an average player from learning how to craft and making even more currency than they've ever dreamt. Now let's first talk about the types of like what makes a good profit crafting. And the first thing is going to be Metacraft. Metacrafts are very useful because, well, it's the most amount of numbers, right? More players means more demand. More demands means when you're making your item, people will buy it and you won't have to wait that much. However, with lots of demand comes a lot of competition, which means you're going to have to price your items smartly, which will be discussed a bit later on. Now, players who follow the meta, they are often going to play the build because of, their favorite content creator said something, they made a new build, and everybody's going to follow, right? They didn't start playing meta builds because, oh, I made a POB and this seems to be better, so I'll be playing this build. It's just, I saw a YouTube video, this shit look cool, I'm going to play the game. This means these players have a often low understanding of their build, and especially a low understanding how to craft it, which means meta builds are often going to be where players who do not know how to craft, it's often going to be the builds that players do not know how to craft them. This is going to be very good for us because they're going to come home to relax, play the game. They don't want to break their heads with using their currency and having the stress of, oh, am I going to hit it finally or not? Oh, I wasted half my currency. I could have bought it for cheaper. Or, oh yeah, I saved just a bit, but was it worth it after 10 minutes of me following 20 different guides? We're going to make use of that, and we're going to, well, it's kind of sad to say, but we're going to be profiting off of, their lack of knowledge, thanks to our knowledge on how to make the item, as well as the fact that we are not attached to that said currency. Now let's just go on internet. Sorry if I'm not ready for that one. Let's just go for the best way to check for profit crafting is simply by going on PoE Ninja and going in the build section. Here you're going to see all the different ascendancies and their percentage of players who are played, well, the percentage of players who play that ascendancy. As you can see, the top meta build is a Deadeye at 18%. This means 18% of all players play a Deadeye. As you can see with the uniques, Watcher's Eye doesn't mean anything, Lethal Pride doesn't, that which was taken says nothing. However, Venter's Gamble at 49, so let's say 50%, means half the Deadeye players actually play Magic Find. This means 18%, half of it, 9% of the whole player base right now is actually playing Magic Find Deadeye. When you look at Magic Find Deadeye at 50%, 90% of them play Tornado Shot, which means we're just going to say a number, 8%. So 1 in 12 of every player in this game right now is playing Tornado Shot Magic Find. This will kind of give you a pathway of, hey, what should I make as a meta build? Now you look at top players, and well, we're not going to go the toppest, so let's just take a random player, and we're going to take a look at his gear. He has a classic bow, obviously, his quiver. His body armor is the Greed's Embrace, so unique, Venter's Gamble, Goldworm. He's going for Mage Blood, and he has Cold Conversion gloves. You can see here also he has a lot of clusters, and so by looking at his stuff, you're going to look, well, he has mirrored bow, mirror quiver, so unless you're going to make mirror items, you're not going to really look at it. However, you can see that the gloves are you can easily make them. They're just classic Tornado Shot gloves. The helmet is just a standard looking fractured rare helmet. The flask, well, you can always roll them, and it's pretty much the easiest profit you can ever make, as well as clusters. So that's one example. You have the simplex, but that's just like half a mirror just for the base, so is it worth it? Not really. You can look at somebody else. That's going to be the same guy, maybe a bit higher end. And okay, no, that's a Omni. That is a weird looking bow. Okay, so another guy, well, this time he doesn't have Greed's Embrace, but it's the same logic. He has the same helmet, pretty much, even though this one is mirrored. He has the same Cold Conversion gloves, and he also has clusters and, as well as flasks. So this will give you an idea of, hey, what could I craft? Well, they're all going to be using some clusters. They're all going to be using Cold Conversion gloves, and they're pretty much all going to be using that same standard looking helmet. So when you're going to be profit crafting, you can go this way. And that works even if it's not the most popular, right? It doesn't need to be the most popular. It could be, even if you continue in the Magic Find area, there's the new Detonate Dead with the Fulcrum stuff. That is also something popular. There's also the rise of armor stackers, which is completely bonkers. If you took, Ascendant, for example, you can check, well, Ice Spear, obviously, but Smite, you'd have a ton of armor stacker, as you can see here: Smite, Chaos Inoculation, Iron Reflex. So you could take a look at them, and you're gonna see, okay, well, they have, well, this one's mirrored, sorry. So let's just go something that isn't completely broken. Let's just say this one. Well, he has a lot of uniques, right? However, you can still make profit with uniques, which we'll be discussing. He has a corruption right here on his Aegis. He has a corruption on his Kaom. Does he have a corruption on... Yeah, he has a corruption on his Doriani. He has Flask, and oh, look at that. He has a shit ton of clusters. And pretty much every single armor stacker will have a ton of clusters. So you know, I can make a lot of currency, probably, with crafting for clusters and Flask, because they all run Mage Bloods. So this is how I look at Metacrafts. I really look at how many people play it, what can I make the most amount of currency, and especially how many of those said items they have. The more somebody has clusters, example, as we saw, the guy had 8 clusters. This means when I'm making a cluster, a single player will need 8 of them, which means the demand isn't even the number of players. It's the number of players multiplied by how many times he needs it, which is like 8 times. So technically, the demand is 8 times higher than the percentage, which is something to note. Now, a different way of crafting is going to be the niche. Don't go in the middle, okay? Either go meta or niche. The reason I like going niche is, well, first of all, yes, there's a low demand, which means not a lot of players are going to be buying them. And often the players have a deeper knowledge of their build. They know what they're doing because it's not a content creator who told them to do it. It's themselves, or, you know, one of their buddies said, hey, try this, and they decided to try it. However, people that play niche builds are often a lot more invested in that build, and they're often going to invest a lot more. As well, when a build is niche, that means the supply or your competition is a lot lower. This means if you are the best one at making those items, you will literally own this market. When you own a market, it's a monopoly. You can choose the prices, you can choose how many you can sell at the same time, and you can basically, you just manipulate the market. Now, careful to not go too niche, okay? If it's like 10 players who play this build, it's useless. When I'm talking about niche, I'm talking about builds that, yes, maybe people know of, but they wouldn't touch because either it's too scary, the mechanics looks too complicated, or it's deemed too expensive. Now, another way of trying to hunt for what can make a lot of currency is going to be how tedious it is. Tedious doesn't mean hard. It's tiresome, or not, I don't know how to say that word. Meaning it's just annoying to make. It's a lot of spamming, a lot of exalt, a lot of annuls, just a lot of alteration. Okay, for example, the best example really is just Flasks. Flask is one of the best way to make currency, and everybody knows you can make currency out of Flask. The reason people don't do it is because it's goddamn annoying. You have to roll with your alt until you get, you know, the increased effect, or the gain 3 charges when you get hit, or the crit, you know, whatever you're looking for, and then you're gonna have to add a modifier. If it doesn't work, well, you're gonna have to take it off, add it back, take it off, add it back, and you know, it might take you, I don't know, 5 minutes to buy the flask, or you can just spend a bit more and buy it directly. People are going to spend a bit more, buy it directly, so they can go to mapping as quickly as possible. However, we're not mappers, right? We're gonna be making those items, as well as when something is tedious, especially for those type of things, you start making a lot of profit, not when you make a single one of them, but when you make a lot at the same time. The player only needs 1 Quicksilver flask, right? He's not going to make 20 of them. You're going to be making 20 of them. You're going to have them all into your, you know, your stash. You're going to have your rejects to see, okay, I want the 25% increased effect, and you're going to be spamming alt orbs everywhere, 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 everywhere. This is going to make it a lot quicker for you, as well as you'll have more at the same time. So tedious, when something is tedious, especially flask, clusters, sextant rolling, alt spamming for bases, those make a ton of currency while being extremely simple. On the opposite side of simple, the crafts that are seemingly difficult, there's items where you look at them and you're like, oh my god, this looks complicated to make. Or those who require more knowledge, for example, influence crafting with elevated suffixes, elevated modifiers, they aren't hard. They look hard, but they just require the knowledge. And the thing is, Path of Exile players don't really have any knowledge of anything. They don't even have the knowledge for their own build, let alone crafting that build is way too much for them. Now, I'm saying this, I'm not saying they're dumb. It's just most players are not going to be interested in crafting, therefore they won't have any knowledge for that. This is also a way to make a lot of currency because players will just, they'll they'll take one big look at the item that the YouTuber is telling them to get, and they're going to tell themselves in the back of their head, never am I going to be able to make, and never am I going to try to make that item. This means they're going to go up on trade, they're going to search for the item, and whose item is going to be in there? Yours, and you'll be able to sell them to pretty much every single player who is too afraid to make some crafting. Now, another step is how many times they will actually need the item. This is very important to understand. For example, let's talk about bow builds. Bow builds, as the name implies, require a bow. And often the bow is going to be the item they're going to buy the most amount of time and the most amount of currency, obviously. You're going to have the very low end bow. You know, it's league start. You're going to swap. You're going to get a bit more elemental DPS. Then you're going to go for the Omni, maybe get a better bow. Then they're going to swap the cold conversion. You know, there's going to be the normal cold conversion. Then you're going to go high end. And then they might go for the mirror tier. This is what, 5, 6, 7 bows in the same league. This is very good because one single player means a lot of demand. However, unlike the other clusters we were talking about, once he has a higher budget, his old bow, he's going to sell it. Once he sells it, it's going to be either at the same price that the market has or lower because, you know, he doesn't care. He got his new bow. It's worth 100 divs. Okay, well, fuck it. I'm just going to sell it for 80 div, get my 80 div as quickly as possible, and move on. The thing is, for him, that's good. But for you, it's bad because he's either going to tank the price. Well, he is going to tank the price because there's going to be a lot of supply in the end because every time somebody buys a bow, he's going to sell a bow, which means the supply for very popular items will never go down. Okay, bow, the quantity of bow on the market is never going to go down. It's only going to go up. Okay, and one day people will stop buying bows and it's just gonna stay there and there's nothing you can do. And the thing is, most of their bows, if you make profit crafting, are probably gonna be yours. So in the end, you're gonna be fighting against yourself. What I suggest is gonna be making items that players will need, like really need. However, it's only gonna be on the low end, maybe go once or twice for the mid budget and right before mirror tier, and then go to the mirror tier, okay? A good example that we were explaining for the Magic Find characters are the helmets, right? The players are going to get one helmet at a low end, maybe at a 20 divine budget. They're going to go a bit upwards at a 250, 300 divine budget. And they're going to keep it all the way till the end until they get, you know, a mirror tier helmet because there's no purpose of going between 300 to 600 because it's going to be the same thing. And those items are going to be the best ones to make. They're going to need it. They're going to need it a few times, but not too many times. Now let's talk about math and the positive odds and the difference between gambling and, you know, that. You know, there's gambling in Path of Exile, for example, your cards, right? A lot of players like to, at the end of the league, just spend the most amount of currency at gambling their cards. And those don't really follow a math, right? It's really just a gamble. However, there are things that are looked upon as gambling. However, they have odds of happening, and with the math you can calculate those odds and, you know, the benefits of you getting the gamble or losing the gamble, and you can see that you can make pretty big profits. A good example of that is the corruptions. Now the price has probably changed because Belton made a video, but for example, Greed's Embrace, which is a chest that Magic Find Tornado Shot players use, a nice corruption, the +1 and the increased damage used to be 1.2 mirrors. You could definitely make, you can definitely buy Greed's Embraces that aren't corrupted, buy locuses of corruption to double corrupt them, and corrupt them all, and you will, mathematically speaking, make more currency than the losses. As well, we'll be discussing that a bit later, you can change the item level of a few uniques to be able to have higher odds of getting a certain implicit. That doesn't only apply to uniques though. There are different ways of getting odds. For example, elevating items or locking certain modifiers to then Exile Slam. You have sometimes a 50-50 to get the +1 fire gem, stuff like that. Those are gambles for a player because he only needs one item, right? He just wants the single item. And if it's a 1 in 10, well, he better off just buying the item and not having to run the odds. However, you'll be making a lot of them. So you might lose the first time, the second time, the third time. You might actually lose the 10th time, the 15th time. However, if you do it 100, 200, 300 times, you will follow the 1 chance out of 10 logic and you will be making a lot of profit. This is also another way of making a ton. And when I'm telling you a ton of currency, it's just mathematical gambling. As long as the math says you're making currency, you're going to be making currency. Finally, I'm not really going to be teaching that to anybody. I think that's not new, but having a versatile wallet is a very good idea. If you go fully bonkers in a single type of currency making, it's either going to be go home, or go big or go home, but often it's going to be go home. First of all, going full on in one area will make the supply go up, as well as if some content creator or some Reddit thread decides to pop up on the way you make currency, my guy, it's going to drop and your profits are going to go down to a nice zero. When you have a versatile wallet, so you have maybe 3, 4, 5 ways of making profit crafting, if one of them ends up being meta or discovered by some content creator, you won't be losing much because you'll have the others, the 3, 4 other ways of making profit that are still going to generate profit, and you'll continue those and you'll have time to find another way of making currency and you won't be losing your lifeline of divines. Okay, so now let's actually start into the types of crafting you can do. The first one is going to be the base crafting. Base crafting is not basic crafting, it's making bases for either other profit crafters or for the people who are following crafting guides. A good example of that is either rolling for a bow with the +2 additional arrow on the right. You can alt spam, I think it's what, 1 chance in 1,000 or 2,000. You can alt spam for the bow fire 2 additional arrows and just sell it like that. Or you can get that and then have the 1 chance in 4 gamble of fracturing it and having the bow attacks fire 2 additional arrow. Usually in this example specifically, it's cheaper to get the one already rolled and then just fracturing it, because the time it takes to roll the item, you could basically just fracture 10 times more items and make more currency per hour. But yeah, example, on the right hand, you have a 2 divine bow. And let's say the fracturing orbs cost 30 divines. You have 1 chance in 4 to fracture it because you need 4 modifiers to use a fracturing orb. And you can make a lot of currency with that. Once you have it fractured, you could either sell it for a lot of divines, or you can continue your craft into the full item craft. So full item craft, you could either go from A to Z, or buying the base. For example, we're going to continue the example of the +2 fractured bow and then making it into a physical DPS bow. As you can see in the example before, it was 2 divines without the fracture. It jumped into 100 divines, 130 let's say, with the fracture. And then if you spend even more, you can make a nice, this one is what, I'd say 850 physical bow, and you can sell that thing for 600 divines. It is often going to be a lot easier to sell full item crafts than base crafts, because as I said, most players, even though there are crafting guides out there, they don't want to go through the hassle and they'll just buy the item outright. However, it is going to be harder to craft, or more tedious or longer to craft than if it was to make base items. So you're going to have to calculate whether it's better to just go for the base item and you can make more of them per hour even though they sell for lower, or you can make fewer but for higher numbers of profit. And even sometimes the price can go up, but the cost of making the item, even if it's a full item, can cost the profit margin, will be lower. So you're gonna have to do the calculation between time, profit margin, and how much you can do an hour. Next one is gonna be the mechanics crafts. This one is, I don't know why, always forgotten. Okay, PoE is the same. It's literally the same game for like the past 10 years. The only reason players come back to it after being burnt and playing the game for 2 weeks without sleeping is because every 3 or 4 months, there's a new mechanic, there's a new league mechanic. The thing is, a lot of old mechanics still remain, but they are not, the average player aren't going to use them because he's coming back simply for the new mechanic. Some of those old mechanics are actually crafting mechanics, such as beast crafting, ROG, especially early on, Horde crafting, even syndicate crafting. Syndicate craft, I'll get back to it later, but those mechanics have been there for a very, very long time. However, most players will not touch them because, as I said, they are touching another mechanic. This means you and, of course, a percentage of other crafters will be abusing those mechanics and selling them to the new players who are abusing the new mechanics, which are often just not interesting for you. Another crafting for profit is going to be corruption crafting. Corruption crafting can give you a ton of big money. Like, you can make a lot of currency with corruption crafts. Most players actually think it's just 100% a gamble, right? Oh, I'm just vol it, it's gonna work or it's not gonna work. I don't know. You you can't deterministically think this is gonna be the modifier that you're gonna get. But actually, yes, there are techniques. For example, lowering the item level to a specific level to block certain implicits, and then you can get those specific implicits that you want. For example, some items you can actually get them at level 2. Like the item level is level 2, which grants you the possibility of only having 3 or 4 implicits possible. If they were level 80, you'd have to choose between 30 different implicits. So by learning how to do corruption crafts, even if it's just item or even gems, right? Awakened gems, normal gems, it's basically a 1 chance in 4 of getting an implicit or a higher level. And then it's, depending on the item level, you have the odds in the 1 chance in 4 to get maybe 1 chance in 2 to get that specific mod. So in the end, you have 1 chance in 8 to get the mod. You do the math. Is it profit crafting or not? It is profit. Boom. Just go for it. A ton, I'm telling you, a ton of profit can be made with that. There comes flipping and transforming. There's flipping without having to craft, just like buying items in bulk, selling them in bulk, you'll be flipping. However, you can be flipping, when I'm talking about flipping and crafting, it's just basically buying an item, transforming it like once or twice, and then selling it back. You can make a lot of currency with pretty much no risk because you know what you're buying and you know what you're selling. You already know what it's going, you know what the end result is going to be in, and you know exactly how much currency you're going to have to invest. And for example, you can buy fractured item with the +1 gem, roll for the +2 and sell it back for 3-4 times the price. You can also just buy fossils, breaches, use the Horde crafting and just transform it into a different breach or fossil and you'll make profit. You can do that with cards. You can do that with so many things. And what's really cool about that is there's a lot of small videos about that. You can learn and understand the technique and use it for yourself afterwards. Flipping is often going to be the quickest and the least amount of headaches when you're doing profit crafting. And so when you have not a lot of knowledge or you're interested in starting to profit craft, I really suggest going for small flips or for small transformation. It's a very good introduction to the world of crafting and the world of profit crafting. Now this one isn't going to be that much of you crafting, but you can sell services for crafting. The Syndicate mechanic has the ability to modify certain items in certain ways, and you can sell the service of crafting of, that crafting process to other players on, for example, Discord. As you can see, a tier 4 Aisling, where you remove a modifier and add a veiled modifier, you can sell that for 8 divines. So if you farm it yourself, it could be Aisling, it could be Hillock, it can be Vorchi, it can be any of that. You can just sell that service for a fee. They'll give you the item, you just smack the mod on it, you give it back, they give you the currency. You can do that as well with bench crafting mods, especially early on in League. You can just rush to get the most amount of bench crafting and just sell them for, just a few chaos. But the thing is, it's better to pay a few chaos than actually finding the map, farming it yourself, get the thing, and then go on your bench. They're going to go to you and you're going to be generating a lot of bubblegum currency, but in the end, it'll be currency no matter what. Another type of crafting is going to be build crafting. This one is my favorite and it is the one I'm currently kind of exclusively doing. I kind of stopped doing other types of profit craft and I concentrate a lot in build crafting. When players actually just don't dare making items for their build, so making their whole build for them is like the biggest blessings they can ever have, right? A lot of players will play many different builds throughout the league, so they're going to be playing a specific build. Okay, I'm tired of playing it. They're not going to sell their items one after the other. They're just going to send the POB and they're going to say, hey, I just want to sell this whole build for this amount of currency. Someone is going to buy that build because, well, he doesn't want to make a build himself, right? And then that player will have a lot of liquid currency to buy another build. He's often not going to buy every single item and make the build himself. He's going to hit his currency. He's going to turn around, look at a list of people selling their build. Oh, I like this one. Let me buy it. Well, if you're a good crafter or a long time enjoyer of a specific build, for example, me, it's Tornado Shot, well, you can profit craft the whole build, right? It's not even profit crafting a single item. Every single item that you make, you will make profit out of it and you'll be selling it to market value. And what's really cool about that is if you're able to sell the build, of course, and the build is a bit known and you're good enough at making the build, right? Because if you suck at making the build, just don't make build crafting. You can guarantee that every single item is sold right? You sell the build, every single item you made for that build is going to that guy, and you're getting all of that currency. This craft will require a bit more knowledge, patience. However, the margins are better because if you lose, or example, you don't make a lot of currency, or you're in loss of currency when you're making the clusters, well, you can make that up or win it back by making the bow or by making the chest, the helmet, stuff like that. So all rounded, if you really like going on POBs, making builds, because it's exciting because you can make the build, play the build, and then just sell it right back. And that's what I do. I make a build, I play it a bit, and I sell it back. Very good, very nice, and very fun. Now finally, the most expensive, tedious, annoying, expensive as sell. Yes, I said it twice. And the most profitable crafting in the game is mirror tier crafting. The mirror is the ultimate sign of wealth in Path of Exile. Somebody who has a mirror means he is rich, okay? It is, well, obviously, it's not the highest priced currency, but in League it is. It is the most expensive item that you can, the most expensive currency item that you can get in Leagues. And mirrors, what do? Is they're used to mirror an item. So you get basically a copycat item of whichever item you apply this mirror on. The thing is, because it is so rare and so expensive, you're only going to be using a mirror on the best items you can have, right? If you have the option of the best item or the second best item, you're going to go for the best item. And that is what mirror crafting is. It's really about making the best item or just go home. Because the moment somebody has a better item than you, unless the fee is literally free and you have a very high fee, nobody will come to you. They will all get for the best item. It is very expensive to get into mirror crafting, and often mirror crafting costs, well, often mirror crafting costs more than a mirror, right? Or else there'd be no point of mirroring the item. You could just make the item yourself. It's often going to cost maybe 3 on the low end. It might cost 15, 20, 30 mirrors sometimes to make the item. However, once the item is done, you don't have to do any more work. People will come to you, they will ask to mirror the item. Now, how do you make the currency? Because when you use the mirror is transformed into the mirrored item. You will be charging a fee when making the item. So I'd say it's 1 mirror to copy the item, and my fee is 100 divines. So players will come, they'll give you the mirror, you'll copy the item, and when you're giving the copied item, they will give you 100 divines. This means no work. All you have to do is right click, left click, and trade, and you'll be generating currency. People will be lining up, if your item is very good, very meta, for copying the item. Now, it's important when you're making a mirror tier item, try to make it meta, okay? That means a lot more competition. However, if you make some very niche mirror craft, you will probably never make the currency back because not enough people are going to be mirroring it, so not enough fees, and not enough fees means you can't really win back those mirrors you spent. However, if you are watching this guide and it's the first time you're studying mirror crafting, crafting for profit, mirror crafting is going to be kind of a long way before you get there. All right, now let's talk about pricing. Whenever you made the item, the next step is going to be price and sell the item. And there are a few things you need to think about when you're pricing your items. The first thing is, how quickly do I need that currency? Let's say you make an item and it's worth us 100 divines. If you really need currency quickly, you can sell it for 90. However, if you really don't need the currency quickly, I suggest making it at 100 divines because this will kind of make your strategy viable for longer. If every time you make the item and you sell it at 90 divs, one day somebody's going to get the item or sell back the item or drop the item, and he's going to sell it for 85. And then instead of being able to sell the item at 100 divines, you'll have no choice to sell at level 80 at 85 divines because, well, people will start listing them at 85 divines. Therefore, you're shooting yourself in the foot by making the prices go down. However, if you do not care about the strategy, right? You made 5 or 6 items and you don't intend of reusing that strategy, go for it. Just sell it quickly at low price, cash out, and if the market crashes, you don't care because you're not in there anymore. Now, the most important thing is you need to understand supply must never equal or exceed the demand, okay? Now, sometimes often you don't have any control, but if you have a control on that, never equal the demand and never exceed it. By having a low supply, players will fight for those items, which means the prices can go up. When you're profit crafting, you're going to be making multiple items, right? However, if you have 20 of those, don't sell 20 of them at the same time. Don't list them all at the same time, because that means the supply went up. Even if you have 20 items, I suggest pricing the ones that are like one on the low end, one on the mid end, and a better rolled one for a higher price, right? Don't sell 3 of them at the same price. Sell 3 of them at different prices and at different and not similar. Like if you sell one at 15 divines, don't sell the other one at 16 or at 17. Sell one at maybe 14 divines, the other one in the 18, and then the higher one maybe 20, 21. This will help you to not crash the market and drop the prices. Now, when is profit crafting at its best is when the market doesn't make sense, right? When more players need an item, it's going to be more expensive, right? That's logic. However, the more expensive the item is, the more expensive the resources to make the items are going to be. However, this rule is sometimes broken when the players who are, selling the item don't, with the lack of knowledge, don't know that the resources are cheap. Or usually it's the other way around. When the item is very expensive, but the people who are selling the resource to make the item don't know, either because they don't know that that resource is the one needed to make the item, or they don't even know that the item is expensive. You can abuse that by buying cheap resources and selling the item for a lot more. As well, the more the supply, the prices tank, right? But sometimes people don't understand that because there are so many people buying at the same time. The best example of that was the Heat Shivers last league. The moment people said, GGG announced that Heat Shivers were gonna go for, legacy. Well, they were legacy. They're getting nerfed, right? They went from 100 to 30%. The prices quintupled for the corruptions, right? They were 1, 2, 3 mirrors depending on if it was a double corrupt and stuff. And even though people wouldn't be playing standard, right? Because the items were going in standard, they would still sell it for a lot of currency. The thing is, Heat Shivers with the additional arrow and the 90% reservation, like literally 3/4 of every single Tornado Shop player had them. So there was a ton of supply. However, the price rose because they were panicking and weren't thinking straight. So what you could have done at that time was sell all of your Heat Shivers for a ton of currency, and then look at now, 2 months later in standard, instead of being mirrors, it is now 200 divines to buy those Heat Shivers. And with all that currency you made, you could literally just buy back the Heat Shivers you sold and still make a 80, 40, 60% profit margin, okay? So this is also something you need to understand is when, like I'm not an economist and I'm not saying I know how market works, but when a normal market doesn't function properly, that is the best time to make currency off of players. Another very, very low-key but very, very good way of making currency is using content creators to your advantage, especially the popular ones or the ones that are known to be very knowledgeable in a certain area. They are basically the people who indirectly decide, or directly, because some of them aren't legit, but they decide really what costs a lot because they influence the players in Path of Exile, and those players will, I'm telling you, mindlessly follow them, okay? The moment a big content creator says, this is the best item for your low-end build, every single player who has that low-end build is going to go buy it. What's going to happen? The prices are going to quadruple, and then everybody in the comment, you're going to say, hey, you lied in the budget. This item is literally half your budget. Well, it wasn't 2 days ago, but the moment he made the video, the prices went up. So if you have a deep knowledge in a specific build, and you see a pretty known content creator making content for that build, give yourself a head start. Buy those items in advance because you know he's going to get to a stage where he's going to need those items. He's going to make a video out of it, and then everybody's going to follow them. So you can buy 10, 20 items, wait, he makes the video, and sell them back for so much more profit. Now, it could work, it could not work. And yes, that one is a bit more of a gamble, but I'm telling you, big content creators make the prices go up. Okay, that could be for just buying the items and waiting, or just crafting the items, right? Example, it's an unknown build for now, but you know how to make those gloves, and you know making those gloves is a bit complicated. You're going to make those gloves, you're going to wait that he makes the video, and then boom, the price go up. Now, you've watched this whole video and you're a new player and you're like, yeah, but give me examples on how to profit craft. I just want to explain that videos for profit crafting you should watch them, and you should watch them not to copy, but to understand the logic of why at that specific time this video was giving you why this profit craft was very profitable and why maybe right now it isn't. Okay, so when you're watching a profit craft and you're like, this doesn't make sense anymore, it doesn't work anymore, it's still good to watch it, because you're gonna understand what you're gonna have to do a bit of research and understand why right now it's not working, but before it was working, and then apply that logic to random items that you are using. Okay, you're gonna be playing builds in the game. Just look at your own build and tell yourself, what wouldn't I want to craft, or what do I think the scariest thing is to craft, or what do I think is the hardest thing to buy, right? Because sometimes you're trying to buy an item and nobody sells it or nobody answers. Well, there you go. You can make a profit craft right there. Now, to give you giveaways, I think early league, especially if you're new and it's very brain dead, you can go for ROG crafting. You can make you're printing currency. ROG crafting early league is a currency printer. If you're really new and it's kind of not the early league anymore, I suggest transforming and flipping, corrupting gems when you level them. So literally just get a weapon swap, get gems, and just corrupt them. It is considered profit crafting, and you'll be making a lot of profit. For example, we know that armor stacking is very popular now. What do armor stacking need at a level 21 at like very important? Are their purity gems, right? Because without the purity, between level 20 and 21, if you get the +2 at level 23 or to level 22, it's either 4% additional elemental resistance or a fire elemental resistance, or example, +5 to maximum fire resistance. And if you look at the price, if you level them at level 21, a purity of fire is 7 divines. 7 divines! You could just play the game, get some gems, corrupt them at level 21, and it's the easiest 7 divines you've ever made, because they cost 1 alteration to buy, they cost nothing to level up because you're having fun, and they cost 1 Val Orb, and it's, I think, 1 chance in maybe 10. Flask crafting is always the best. It's always been there. Everybody knows about it. The thing is, nobody wants to do it, and it will always remain there. When you need currency, you're like, okay, how can I make 10 divines very easily? Just get a random flask, alt spam it, and boom, you're probably going to be able to sell it for a mirror or two, a divine or two to Mageblood users. Finally, I think ring crafting is also very nice, because by literally just spamming random things, you're going to get 3 or 4 good modifiers and you'll be able to sell it. Okay, I used to just buy like hundreds of rings and just spam them, and I would just sell them, and boom, I just made currency. It's really not that deep. Just try different things, but don't try them not enough, right? If you try something once or twice and you're like, oh, it doesn't work, I'm never going to touch it again, that's a bad decision. Okay, try it. It's probably going to be working, and then after that, once it works, you understand better and you can go deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, I know it was a lot of talking, and I will be making profit crafting videos as examples. However, I really wanted to give this guide for players who are interested in making it. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you have any comments or criticism, you can always let me know in the video description, and you can always join the Discord server. I am always there to help. Have a nice one.